IBM put out a report last year that said that the average time to detect and respond to a threat was 311 days. That's 311 days.
Marcus, what are key leadership qualities that you believe are essential for guiding organizations through the turbulent waters of the modern cybersecurity threat?
It doesn't really matter about whether you're talking about data centers and cloud computing, or a couple of laptops hooked up in a small or micro business. The threat is the threat is the threat is the threat. It doesn't change your approach to cybersecurity. So still thinking through that self-defense, passive defense, and active defense.
For those that are already working remotely, like a typical good advice that you will tell either the founders or CEOs of companies, and also the employees that are, you're working remote, you're working from home, you're doing digital nomad.
The cyber threat does not recognize, geographic borders or international jurisdictions and whatnot. So we don't have internationally accepted norms of behaviour in cyberspace.
Hello, and a warm welcome to the Tech Foresight podcast, your compass in the rapidly transforming world of technology and business leadership. I am Diana Daniels, a Mexican entrepreneur, passionately working at the intersection of telecom, finance, labor, and digital inclusion. Today, and in every episode, I will be your navigator, charting the course through the uncharted territories of the future of telecommunications, technology, and disruptive innovation. We're very happy to receive today an incredible disruptor and innovator. With us is Marcus Thompson, a legend in areas of cybersecurity, information technology, and information warfare. With a long and successful career in the Australian Army, Marcus culminated this appointment as the head of information warfare for the Australian Defence Force as a Major General. He also been in a wide variety of leadership and operational roles within both conventional and special military units, and the Department of the Prime Minister, the Cabinet, and as well to his more recent roles. Marcus has been in the boards of the Bank of Australia, Macquarie Technology Group, one of the largest Australian data centers, cloud, cybersecurity, and telecom companies. And he was also recently appointed the chair of the board for Character, which today is already part of the Deloitte Consulting Company, where Marcus is advising. And we're actually the founders of that company spent years protecting the Australian Defence Force and the nation. So lots of expertise to talk today with us in this Tech Foresight podcast. Thank you, Marcus, for being with us.
Hello, Diana. It's fabulous to be here, and it's wonderful to see you again.
My pleasure. Marcus, your career in the Australian Army, particularly as the head of information warfare for the Australian Defence Force, offers unparalleled perspective of the evolution of information warfare. Could you share with us how information warfare has transformed over your career and its implications for national security today?
Yeah, sure thing, Diana. I mean, I guess the first thing to realise is that information warfare is not new. It's been around since biblical times. Deception, psychological operations, information operations, influence activities. They've been around for centuries, if not longer. What's new, of course, and something that has contemporary militaries thinking very hard is the opportunity for those activities to be conducted in and through cyberspace, and therefore the speed and the scale at which those information warfare effects can be delivered. So in the military, certainly in Western militaries, Diana, we talk about effects kinetic being what I like to describe as loud and orange effects, and then non-kinetic effects, which is a lot into that influence and information warfare. And my appointment as the inaugural head of information warfare back in 2017 was a recognition commissioned by the Australian military, the Australian Defence Force, that information warfare was important and for contemporary warfighting, and that we needed to build up our capabilities in that area.
Wow. Well, so having led, these conventional and also the special military units before, and when you move into this very significant Australian government, and then from the Australian government to the private sector, I believe that you have seen the importance of leadership in cybersecurity and defense. I guess that your expertise could provide like very good lessons for leaders that are striving to build resilient and secure organizations. So I would like to ask you, Marcus, what are key leadership qualities that you believe are essential for guiding organizations through the turbulent waters of the modern cybersecurity threat?
Yeah, well, goodness me, Diana, how much time have we got? There's a fair bit to that. I mean, I might answer in two parts, if that's okay. I might talk about how business leaders might think through their cybersecurity risk, but I might also just offer a few thoughts on the leadership of technical workforces, which is a different different sort of leadership. In fact, why don't I start there? So, my experience, and I was privileged, Diana, to lead and command some of the smartest soldiers, sailors, and aviators in the Australian Defence Force, and incredibly smart, highly technically qualified men and women, being so smart, the Hollywood stereotype of military command, which is presented in Hollywood as we'll just shut up and do this, doesn't work with these people. You heard it first here, Diana. It's never worked with anyone, and that's not how professional militaries actually lead, or professional leaders lead these days. But we won't take on Hollywood today, perhaps. I found that dealing with these incredibly intelligent, highly technically qualified people, that it was always worthwhile taking the extra few moments or the extra few minutes to really help them understand why that they were being asked to do something. I need you to do this because that person there is doing that and that person there is doing that, and this is how it all knits together for that effect that we're that we're looking for, and because I found, Diana, that once these folk understood what was required and why, there was just no stopping them. You didn't need to encourage them, you didn't need to push them along. They just absolutely got on with it, and which was a different leadership style to perhaps what many of your listeners, viewers would think is a stereotypical military leadership style, and I would hasten to add, Diana, that I found that style is as applicable to civilian technical workforces as it is to military. So that brings me to more generally, the role of leaders in considering the cybersecurity risk facing their organisations, and look, and up front, Diana, it's not about turning these leaders into cybersecurity experts or board members or anyone else in the C-suite. So just like you don't need to be a lawyer to form a view on workplace health and safety, or you don't need to be an accountant to form a view on the solvency of an organisation. Because in most countries, if a company is found to be trading whilst insolvent, that can get directors into big legal troubles, of course. Right. Same with workplace health and safety, but I do think it is important for leaders to educate themselves, in just the basics, and to understand what questions to ask of the technical leaders, of the chief information officer or the chief information security officer or the chief security officer or the chief risk officer. You pick a label, whoever it is, but just having a sense of what questions to be asked, and to have the confidence and the determination to ask those cascading questions, and keep asking questions until you as a leader are satisfied that the cybersecurity risk has been managed to within whatever your risk tolerance is. And I like to think of it in three parts, Diana, and as headings that smart generalists can use to think through cybersecurity. And the three headings are self-defense, passive defense, and active defense. Let me really quickly go through those three.
Yes, tell us what it is about.
So self-defense, that's about culture. It's about awareness. It's about, don't be that person who clicks on the link in the phishing email. Don't be that person who finds a memory stick out in the car park and out of idle curiosity plugs it into the corporate systems. So what is so question, what is the status of our security culture? How good is our workforce? Are they educated? Do they know not to do this? Looking a bit further afield, what is already out there in cyberspace about our company, about us as individuals, that a professional criminal threat actor with a targeting mindset can turn around and use against us. And so it's good to actually Google yourself as a company, or Google yourself as an individual every now and then, just so you have a sense of what's out there. I mean, so I group that under self-defense. It's really for any legal type people who are listening, watching, it's really self-protection, but I like to use the term self-defense. So moving along is passive defense. This is where we, do we have the basic network hygiene sorted out? Are we whitelisting applications? Are we patching our hardware? Are we patching our systems? Do we have multi-factor authentication on our systems? How many people have privileged administrator access to our networks and systems? And how often do we go through and make sure that only the people who need privileged access have that privileged access? For example, so in my days, as a youngster, as a communications engineer, we'd talk about that being network hygiene. Now we talk about it being the bare minimum, the bare essentials for setting the cybersecurity for networks and systems. And Diane, I might just digress there. It's important that the reason I talk about networks and systems is because it's not just about computer networks. So many, so much equipment, so much plant, so many objects now are digital. That they are connected. So therefore, they need. To think of a modern factory, it's all digital, and so all of that plant, all of that machinery needs to be protected as well. So it's not just about the laptop sitting on your desk, or the server, or the racks of servers in your server room. So that's the passive defense. And the final piece that I like to talk about is active defense, and this is that sort of smaller numbers of more highly trained people who are actively monitoring your networks and systems so that they can quickly detect and respond to any problem that comes up, be that an attack or someone does something wrong, or just something goes wrong, right? So in Australia, of course I'm based in Australia here, Diana, and IBM put out a report last year that said that the average time to detect and respond to a breach of a network across the Australian economy. So that's industry, that's government, that's academia, that's not-for-profit, across the economy. The average time to detect and respond to a threat was 311 days. That's 311 days. Just correct. I think that number probably needs to be tested, but the fact that IBM put it out gives it some credibility. And I don't know any business leader who would happily tolerate a threat actor inside their systems for 311 days. But I'll bet you where those sort of numbers come from is that they don't have an active defence capability. Because so typically these active defence capabilities, and you mentioned that until recently I was the chair of a company called Paraflare that's recently been acquired by Deloitte, and that's what Paraflare did. They did that active defence, managed detection and response. The average time for Paraflare clients to detect and respond was 51 seconds. And so I say to anyone, 311 days, 51 seconds, your call when you're thinking about how you address, manage and mitigate risk. Now, sure, there's investment to do that, but 311 days, 51 seconds, the choice is yours. And so, Diana, I know I'm monologuing here. I'll stop in just a second. So that's, you asked me about leadership and how leaders can think through their cybersecurity risk. There's all sorts of frameworks. There's the NIST framework, and in Australia, there's ISO 27001. But I think just those three headings of self-defence, passive defence, and active defence are useful headings for smart generalists to ask those cascading questions of their technical staff.
I love it because you give us a very cool framework, from the active defense, passive defense, and self-defense. I know I did them on the reverse side, but it's actually given us kind of like a very good clue on how to do. Cybersecurity is on the top 3 worries of any CEO, and especially nowadays where most of our staff is either working remote, right? Many of them or new hires are doing your own device. They're not only bringing their own device to the company, they're even using their own device from home. So the cybersecurity threats become more active and more worrisome. Out of these 3 steps that you have given us, what do you think that, especially, and think about, because yes, obviously the big corporations somehow can afford different type of systems. But if we think about the small, medium corporations, what can they do?
Yeah. So I would argue, Diana, that even for small businesses, those 3 headings are useful. Now, of course, when it comes to active defence, that those smaller numbers of more highly trained people, if you're not a big bank, if you're not a massive retail conglomerate, chances are you're not going to be able to maintain that capability in-house. So that's okay. Buy it in, hire it in, for whatever monthly fee it costs, buy it in. It gets a little bit challenging for some of the larger medium businesses, who want to have a crack at holding those capabilities in-house. I just say that, back to managing and leading technical workforces, the cybersecurity industry or the cybersecurity workforce is a unique workforce in my observation. They are curious, they are in a hurry, they want to learn new skills and experience new experiences. And so if you're not big enough to have a team of sufficient mass and size to provide those different career development opportunities and career progression opportunities, then you might be able to recruit people to that team, but it's going to be very, very, very difficult to retain them. And that's where so buying that in as a service is a worthwhile method, for those bottom end of large, medium, and small businesses to think about.
And for those that are already working remotely, like a typical good advice that you will tell either the founders or CEOs of companies, and also the employees that are you're working remote, you're working from home, you're doing digital nomad. What would you tell them?
Be having a really good hard think about virtual private networks, about the configuration of devices that you permit to connect to your systems, and what is the standard of security or the minimum standard of security that you'll dictate for a BYO device, a circumstance, and then audit it. Check it and audit and check it and audit and check and audit. I mean, I listed all of those. I mean, I listed several of those measures under passive defence. But I got to say, Diana, if systems are patched, if you've got the latest software patch installed on your Microsoft software, if you've got the latest hardware patch, on your Dell device, or whatever, insert brand, and you've got some sort of multi-factor authentication, then you've gone a long way towards not being the weakest link. Remembering that, Diana, that criminals are opportunistic. I mean, think of an old school burglar, who that door is locked, I won't go in there. That door is locked, I won't go. Oh, that door's open. Why don't I go in there and have a look? I used to use the analogy that when you're trying to outswim a shark, you don't have to be the fastest swimmer, just don't be the slowest swimmer. Until it was pointed out to me that sharks come this way, right? Certainly great white sharks that we see down here in the southern hemisphere. So that I use the analogy now that if you're trying to outrun a bear, you don't have to be the fastest runner, just don't be the slowest runner. And that patching, and multi-factor authentication goes a long way to not being the slowest runner, if I can continue that analogy.
I love this. Listen, with your current involvement with one of these big companies and the leaders in data centers that are doing also the cloud services, you are right at the forefront of this securing critical infrastructure in the digital age. Yeah. And what are the most pressing cyber threats in cloud computing and data centers today? How any telco and data center company must address these challenges to protect these clients? And then how do you think this will change for 2040? So we're almost 2025 next year. Let's think that
I know.
How is it going to happen from 5 to 15 years from now?
Yeah, no, I know. Look, I'd say, Diana, that there's it doesn't really matter about whether you're talking about data centers and cloud computing, or a couple of laptops hooked up in a small or micro business. And people always ask me, is it state-based threat actors, or is it professional criminal groups out of Eastern Europe, or is it some hobbyist, out of coming out of a neighbouring state, or a domestic state? I say it doesn't matter. The threat is the threat is the threat is the threat. And whether that threat is coming out of Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, or it's some teenager working out of a garage in Sydney, it doesn't change your approach to cybersecurity. So still thinking through that self-defense, passive defense, and active defense, and having a business continuity plan and incident response plan, that has been rehearsrsed, all the way through the organisation, so that when an incident occurs, everyone knows what's required and who is doing what. I mean, one of the and I acknowledge that it does get quite complex, Diana, when we're talking about third-party providers. And I talked about for medium and small businesses might consider bringing in active defence as a service, managed detection and response is how it's described in the industry. So where that gets quite complex is the gaps in the service level agreements, or potential gaps in service level agreements between different third party providers, and where I've personally seen things go awry in an incident is where those SLAs, where those service level agreements are not well defined, and responsibilities are not well defined, decision making authorities are not well defined, and in some cases punitive measures are not well defined. And I think for CEOs and business leaders who are listening and watching this, is when they're talking to their technical staff, when you're talking to your technical contract manager, just give them a grilling about SLAs and show me where these third-party providers overlap a little bit, so there's no gap. Because these criminals are smart, Diana. They are capable, and determined. And if there's a gap, that's what they're looking for. They'll find it.
And that's scary, Marcus, because what it can happen if you don't plan it ahead of it, it's going to be very difficult. But
and I think that's the key. I think that's the key is planning ahead of it, because the time to be thinking about incident response is before the response, not during the response, right?
Exactly. Hopefully, right? Yeah. So listen, and as we know, the telecommunications operators in regions that have more strict cybersecurity laws, like the US or even Australia, the telecom operators are adapting their security framework to align with both national legislation and the protection of the customer data. So in your view, how can these operators not only comply, but also actively shape the future of cybersecurity policy to ensure that they reflect this balanced approach, which is the cybersecurity and privacy, especially considering the potential encryption backdoors that can be happening, that they're making a little bit, contentious aspects of the current legislation. What do you think?
Absolutely. Look, and this is it's in many respects it's a wicked problem, right? And I know in many countries it is a vexed policy question that has people stumped, and certainly here in Australia, our privacy laws are quite strong. As a community, as a society, as a population, privacy is very important to us. And of course, we had here in Australia about 18 months ago, within a very short period of each other, we had two massive data breaches. One for a private health company known as Medibank, and the other for our second largest telecommunications company called Optus, which is a subsidiary of Singtel. And almost every Australian was affected by one or both of those breaches. And look, so it was a big deal down here, Diana, that resulted in a strong government response with new legislation, amendments to our Privacy Act, the legislation around security of critical infrastructure that directly addressed the potential penalties for a negligent data breach. It's down here it's a big deal. I mean, I think a couple of observations if we've got time. The first is that in many cases here, especially in liberal Western and small L liberal Western democracies, right? That in many cases it's about finding the least worse solution, right? The least worst solution, and what's a compromise that generates or achieves the maximum security effect, without compromising the security, the freedoms, of our citizens, which is have been hard won, over many decades. I do. That's the first observation. The second observation. Not all data breaches are the same, right? So we had lots of commentary down here around the Optus breach, that people were saying, "Oh, my passport details have been stolen, my driver's license details have been stolen, my name and my address have been stolen." Well, hang on a second. Every time you used your passport, the hotel that you stayed in took a photocopy of
Right.
of your passport. Like, what is already out there? Your driver's license. So what many of your viewers, listeners may not know, Diana, is that there are many pubs in Sydney where if you want to enter after 10 p.m. you have to scan your driver's license. So they take a scan
Wow.
of your drive. It's about legal age, and then they just do everyone rather than just trying to pick the people who might be under the legal drinking age here. And address and whatnot. Well, do you remember? We used to, maybe only 10 or 15 years ago, we would deliver everyone's name and address and phone number, your hard copy, to your doorstep in the phone book, right? We used to do the white pages and the yellow pages. So a lot of that stuff is already out there, and so I didn't buy into a lot of this faux indignation that a lot of my personal information has been leaked to the internet. Well, a lot of it's already out there, and so having that understanding of what might already be out there is really important. Now that's not, and I hasten to add here, Diana, that is not in any way, shape or form to diminish the awful experience of a lot of Australians having their sensitive medical information made available on the dark web. So if people had sexually transmitted infections or anything else that they might not want made known public, that's awful, and absolutely condemn that. And the perpetrators need to be brought to justice. I use those two examples, perhaps just to illustrate that in my opinion, Diana, it's not all data breaches are equal.
I feel that that along the years I've become a little bit more paranoid about, obviously, those cybersecurity threats that we're experiencing, and I wonder, how can the countries can identify a collaboration among the cybersecurity. If we think on the agenda of what 2030 is already here, so. Yeah. What do you think that nations can do, and also with their private sectors, to work together to forge a unified framework that tackles global cybersecurity attacks? Because today you got people in Nigeria doing cybersecurity, and in any other parts of the world, or it's not in your village any longer. It has to be an international cooperation. What do you think that it needs to happen today so this doesn't continue to be, at least, let's go to think short term, 2030?
Yeah, well, one of the and this might get a little bit academic, and I'll apologise up front, is that there's a significant aspect of cybersecurity, of course, is that there is the cyber threat does not recognise geographic borders or international jurisdictions and whatnot. So we don't have internationally accepted norms of behaviour in cyberspace. In the same way that we have the quite old now international law of the sea, for to govern the international commons of international waterways and whatnot. We don't have the equivalent of that for cybersecurity. We've got a criminal activity, with Interpol and cooperation between the law enforcement agencies of not only like-mindeds but also others as well. But that took many years and was a hard won outcome. So I know that there's been several attempts at the United Nations and elsewhere to establish these international norms when it comes to cyberspace. Always challenging. This conversation. As soon as the likes of China and Russia are involved, and of course they have quite some influence at the UN. Look, and you've got all this international diplomacy playing out, and all the challenges of that. But I do think that we need to persist with that, and it's hard work and it's going to take a long time, but the outcome will be worth it. And having some sort of international standards of behaviour that this is okay and this is not, and this is the grey bit that we can argue about, is I think a worthwhile objective for our national leaders and our diplomats.
You think that blockchain could serve as a solution for many of these cybersecurity threats?
Oh, look, I mean, I think, yeah, but possibly. I'm just always a bit reticent to jump on that bandwagon, Diana, because I mean anything that connects to the internet is potentially vulnerable. Any data that is making its way around via the internet is potentially vulnerable. And so I mean, I don't think there's a silver bullet here. I don't think there's a single tool or a single technique that will solve this challenge for us. I don't think a compliance approach works. I don't think laws, I don't think strict policies will necessarily help, because I think ultimately it's about risk management. When there's because I apologise to all the lawyers who are watching this, but I know lawyers like to take a compliance approach, and I get it, and I love lawyers, and thanks for everything you do for us. But when there is reported to be a new piece of malware on the streets every 7 to 10 seconds, a compliance approach doesn't necessarily work, because you might do all the work, all the investment, all the effort to be compliant, but a couple of seconds later you might be non-compliant, and that compliance at a point in time is I know it has some utility, but it's not the be all and end all, and that's why I'm forever advocating a risk management approach to managing cybersecurity risk.
So as we arrive into this moment, Marcus, that I would like to shoot you some questions. And ideally, what I would love to hear from you is maybe a response in either one word or maximum one sentence. So
that'll be. Hey, you've been listening to me for half an hour, and you've known me for many years. That's going to be a challenge for me, Diana. One word.
So let's just try to make it happen. Let's see what happens. All right? Are you ready?
Right. Okay.
Well,
I'm up for the challenge.
Let's going to bring the foresight, Let's going to bring it and then think about the future. This is kind of like what we're trying to do here. All right. What technology that will revolutionize cybersecurity? Which will be?
AI.
Very good. And by when?
As soon as possible, please.
Alrighty. Okay. The first word that comes to your mind when you hear cybersecurity in 2030?
Still a challenge.
Challenge. Very good. Okay. If 2040 already, quantum computing, threat or opportunity?
Both.
Ay. All right. Okay. So 2050, we are already in 2050. How different will be cybersecurity from 100 to 180 or 365 if we come back to the same point? What do you think?
Very different. I'd hope by then that we've normalized cybersecurity as just a way of doing business.
Very good. So bigger cyber threat, state actors or cyber criminals?
Both.
Already. Okay. One policy that the change of policy that needed to improve global cybersecurity, what do you think?
International norms of behavior.
I agree with you. Okay. Can you say that AI might be the disruptor in cybersecurity? Do you think that it's going to be an innovation or a risk?
It's already a risk. I'm looking for the innovation.
Very good. Super. So next year, as soon as next year, 2025, the most important cybersecurity tool?
Active defense.
Active defense. I love this because I really love the framework that you have given us. Marcus, what will be your one piece of advice to future cybersecurity professionals?
Oh, stay current, give it a red hot go. There's so much work out there, and enjoy yourself.
Well, this has been an incredible journey, Marcus. Thank you. Thank you. You see, you made it. We landed the plane right on time. This is amazing. Thank you for your generosity. Your input is completely invaluable for us. Thank you so much.
It's my absolute pleasure, Diana. Wonderful to see you.
I appreciate it. And as we close this episode of the Foresight podcast, I'd like to thank you, our audience, for your invaluable company. I am Diana Daniel, and it's been a privilege to explore this groundbreaking with you. The conversation doesn't stop here. Please subscribe, reach out, and let's keep building the future together. Your insights and your enthusiasms are what is driving to the continue reaching the top of the top. So until we meet again, continue to think big, stay ahead, and then remain foresighted in all that you do. Thank you, and see you next time.